right, we got a great show for you today. And also, I got a great announcement today. One of the hottest programs of the year, August 7th, mark that day. August 7th. Mark that date down. I got an atonement, healing, and spiritual workshop coming on with 4 dynamic speakers all under one roof. We got Dr. Quad David Whitaker. We got Dr. James Brown. We got Wayne Chandler. And we got Sister Baila Bello from Haiti. All going to be under one roof to do some spiritual cleansing and some atonement healing for our community. Wayne always talk about this new energy coming, and you can't move forward if you're holding drama and negative energy. Well, this is a program to address that negative energy. We're going to talk about it emotionally, how it affects you, how it affects you physically, how it affects you cosmically, and how it affects you emotionally, all under one roof. So we're going to start that healing process. We're going to talk about it more next week. Great program. All those 4 dynamic speakers under one roof. And you guys can help because I'll be looking for some mini sponsors as well. If you want to be a part of the program, we'll talk about it next week. In the remote studio, I got my main man, Brother Vince. What's going on?
Well, tonight, a very exciting program at Larchmere Arts. We are going to do a musical event. We officially reopened last night with an art show that was presented by Uplift and our friend Sophie Absolutely and E-Rock Beats. But tonight, we are going to welcome Mr. J.T. Lynch of Horns and Things, Stephen E. Boyd of Few People Vocal Ensemble, Rashawn Blake of Vince Robinson and the Jazz Poets, and tonight I'm going to be making my debut as a bassist and keyboardist. So, if you want to get in on it, come by Larchmere Arts. It's going to be $15 at the door. You can cash at me in advance, and that is $THA Soul Poet. And you're in. We've got several people who have already made their reservations, so we're looking forward to a good way to commemorate Juneteenth. So with that said, I want to dispense with the formalities and welcome our guest. He is Dr. Runoko Rashidi. He is no stranger to Cleveland, nor is he a stranger to 360 Info Network. We're not going to give a long, drawn-out introduction because, again, you know him, we know him, and we are glad to have him. Dr. Rashidi, welcome to 360 Info Network.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Great to hear from you. And how are you?
I'm all right. I'm a little surprised, startled that you all are having in-person programs now. These things just are changing dramatically with the announcement of this Juneteenth holiday.
Uh-huh.
And now people are doing live presentations. I was wondering when or if that was going to happen again.
Yeah. Well, we're not quite California. I heard that you all are moving towards vaccination passports and all that good stuff. And I know you were vaccinated, so it's not going to be an issue for you. But things might be a little bit different here in Ohio. I don't know that they're moving towards vaccination passports, at least not right away. So, but yeah, we're doing in-person things, and things kind of changed really quickly because you're not seeing a whole lot of masks or mask wearing. Perhaps the mantra that has been expressed by certain states and the government to a certain extent is taking hold. So, but you're doing all right with things as they are now?
Hey, brother, it's almost a year and a half now. Things have been incredibly quiet. And I pretty much adjusted. I really don't know if I'll ever, to what extent I'll get back to the lecture circuit again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for you, it's probably a lot less effort. I mean, your slides are all on the computer and your knowledge is in your head, so people can see it on the screen. You don't have to go far, and neither do they. And that's one of the reasons that we're having this conversation today. You're doing a presentation called African Star Over Europe, part one is next Friday, June 25th, and that is from 8 p.m. to 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. And then Saturday from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to present before we go to break in 3 minutes.
Well, the first part is going to be on the Moors. Who the Moors were, what they did, why they are important to us. That's Friday. And then on Saturday, we're going to look at the image of the Black King in European art. This is a presentation that focuses on the history of Africans in Europe before the impact of the transatlantic slave trade, which changed everything, changed the power dynamics of the world, and unfortunately changed the way Africans began to see themselves. And we still suffer from that. So it's going to be a highly visual presentation, as you pointed out, in 2 parts. If people are interested, they could simply go to Eventbrite and type in the name Runoko, Runoko, or they can email me at runoko@hotmail.com, and I will send you the details and the information.
Okay. So that's pretty simple. Just go to Eventbrite and put in Runoko, and it's going to take you somewhere where you can make your reservation and make your purchase, or you can send an email to drrunoko@hotmail.com.
No, just Runoko at hotmail.com.
Just Runoko, okay. I know your website is drrunoko.com.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So that sounds great. You've been doing a webinar series, and we have been able to promote them. So I didn't want to miss this opportunity to put things out there for you. You know, some of your videos on my YouTube channel are among the most watched on that channel. So, and I know you have a Patreon platform as well. How is that going?
It's going well. I think we've kind of reached a plateau right now. Which brings me to a question I want to raise with you, I guess, after the break. In fact, let me throw it out there now, because this is a question I get a lot. That we're doing all of this good work, but how do we amplify it? How do we reach more of our people? What is the silver bullet for reaching the masses of our people? I'd like to get your response to that.
Okay. Well, we're going to give you a response, and it is definitely a struggle, but it is a struggle rooted in the DNA of conscious Africans for the past, I don't know how many years. You know, back in the day when we didn't have social media and telephones and all of that, the word got out. So we've got to explore some ways to continue to get the word out, and that's another reason that we're doing this show with you right now. You're listening to 360 Info Network on AM 1490 WERE. I'm Vince Robinson, along with Hamtonio, and our guest is Dr. Runoko Rashidi, who will be presenting African Star over Europe next weekend. We're going to give you more details on how you can sit in on this fascinating webinar that details the presence of Africans in early Europe. We'll be back with more 360 Info Network right after this. We're back. 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson, Hamtonio, and our guest, Dr. Runoko Rashidi. So before we took the break, you posed the question, and Hamtonio, why don't you respond to that question first? I'll give you an entry into this conversation. Tell us.
You said, how can we reach out to our folks and get them engaged? Was that the question, if I recall?
I guess the question is, how do we maximize it? I get that question a lot when I'm doing interviews. And these days, I tend to ask more questions when I'm being interviewed than are directed at me. So how would you respond to that? How do we maximize our effort and reach the masses of our people more effectively? I know you have the answer to that, my brother.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that is a tough one, and it's been, like Vince said, a tough one for many years, And, some folks, say, you got to go, meet them where they're at, and, that's kind of difficult for old school to kind of do that. But that's why we need platforms like this, and we got to get it out. We just got to do a good job, better work, man, and getting it out there. I think that.
Go ahead. Let me add another question, maybe something more practical. Do you ever, and this is for you and Brother Vince, do you ever get discouraged? And if so, how do you deal with that? What keeps you going? What sustains you?
No, let me continue with that one, because that happens a whole lot, okay? You know, and the one thing for me that keeps me going is understanding history, knowing that it never was the masses of the people who made the change for the many, you know, and so that keeps me going. That's why I say, okay, we read books. Let's put some us so-called conscious folks. Let's put some practical together for the people, because through history, the people just follow what's being presented. So we map out a good plan, you know, a good curriculum for them to follow and try to implement it. Then, you know, you might can look at some change.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Lynn. I think that you can't be silent, you know, and you can't be discouraged. When you think about the work that we're doing, you know, many of the things that we're working towards we may not see in this lifetime. But I remember a conversation that we had with Dr. Charles Finch, and basically he said you may not see it in this lifetime, but you must continue to do the work. You know, and I guess what keeps me going is the fact that so many people have expressed their appreciation to us for what we're doing. So that means that there are folks that are out there that are listening. But I think you also have to realize that, you know, everybody is not ready. Everybody's not going to hear, you know. For example, and this is kind of off subject, but I'm going to point this out anyway. I have a bank account, savings account, that I've been getting 0.5% interest in on a yearly basis. 0.5%. In 3 years, I've earned 73 cents on this account. I'm in something right now that's giving me 0.5% every day. So if I tell you that I'm making 0.5% a day when I've been making 0.5% a year, the next question out of your mouth should be, how can I do that?
You're doing what you're doing, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So if I don't get that question, I don't waste my time, because I know that person isn't ready. But then there are folks who are, and those who are, I say, okay, well, this is how you do it. You know, everybody's not interested in the liberation of African people on this planet. But, you know, I really like the approach that Dr. Rashidi is taking. I mean, I see his Facebook posts all the time, and he keeps it in our consciousness, and he gives you something to think about, because those things are things many times that you have never heard of, and it expands your breadth of knowledge about history and culture. So the short answer is, despite all the obstacles and the things that might hinder us, we just have to keep doing what we're doing. And in the process, we are going to be able to liberate the minds of some people. You know, this universe is mental. And, you know, the globe, and I'm saying the globe kind of facetiously, but we're being toyed with. We're being put in a place where they want to be able to control everything we do, all the money that we spend, and control our thoughts. And we have to be able to exist within the freedom of our own minds, with free will, free thought, and focus on becoming free people. So that's my short answer to
one little tidbit. I know you want to respond, Doc. Just one little tidbit there, and I think you're going to touch on it, is that timing is everything. Just think our ancestors, the Martin Luthers and the Garveys of the world, they never seen their projects come to fruition, but they kept the torch lit for the proper timing. So I think it's all about timing, because we wouldn't be where we are right now if it wasn't for them. So it's about cycles and timing, what our ancestors always talked about. So you passed, the time was passed to you, Dr. Rashidi, and all that. So keep it lit. I think it's all in the hands of the Creator, because what my father said to me 20 years ago, is going to take an act from God to take the blinders off of black folks. And every day, that's becoming more and more real to me.
Well, maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I think of my own humanness more than anything else. I think that oftentimes we expect so much of our so-called leaders that we don't allow them to actually be human. We put them on pedestals, and we depend on them, and we view them as saviors. And then when we realize that they're as human as anybody, perhaps even more so, we're disappointed in them. So So I accept my humanness. I accept my weaknesses. I accept the fact that I don't have answers to all of the questions. And maybe that's a very, very healthy thing. You brought up the question of cycles. You used that term. And I wonder about that. If things just happen in cycles, for example, we have the Garvey movement, which coincides with the so-called Harlem Renaissance. And then in South Africa, in my lifetime, we had the African or Black consciousness movement. We had the Civil Rights movement, the Black Power movement. I wonder if these things, in fact, happen in cycles and that you really don't have ultimate control over that. Am I making sense at all?
Absolutely.
Now, next week, I understand, I heard the part about, maybe I misunderstood, about Quad David and Wayne and Baina Bello. And you were talking about cycles and metaphysics and break that down a little bit for me. We have a role reversal here. I'm doing the interview right now, and every now and then I'll pick in a comment and promote my event for next weekend. No, I'm here to learn as well as teach.
Yes.
Right. It's been put on my heart that, Wayne, always used to talk about these cycles and us being ready to when these cycles come in order for us to get us through the cycles. So I've been studying a lot about, spirituality and nature and all that kind of thing. So I looked at us as a people, as black folks, how we, like one of the understandings of the Sphinx, one must learn how to rule over his BC nature. We get caught up in all those low-level vibratory energy, all this drama. And everybody I talk to, even the speakers, could relate to, brother mad with brother because he's studying Islam and I'm studying Baptist, being a Baptist, and we ain't talking to each other because of, a faith different, or when my mama died or daddy died, you got his car and I'm mad and I ain't spoke to you in 10 years, but we're in a possible revolution. We don't have time. We got to transcend above that. How are you going to reach your God consciousness holding on to that negative energy? So that's what it's about. So it was Spirit put on me to say, hey, for those who understand, let's go through a cleansing workshop and start this healing process and transcend above that. And then they're going to break down and show you how on each one of those levels, how holding on to this negative energy affects you from reaching your God consciousness. So that's what it's about.
I want to rewind just a little bit and comment about something that you said, Dr. Rashidi, regarding leadership, because traditionally, cyclically, historically, however you want to put it, we've had leaders, and our leaders have been basically swept under the rug or taken out or whatever, neutralized by some means or fashion. And I think what happens there is that you take the head and then the body doesn't know what to do. I think today we have to look at a different paradigm of leadership and perhaps change our perspective of leadership. So when we look at what you are doing, we see you as a leader, but we also understand that there are a lot of different leaders, and the most important leader is the one that's looking at you in the mirror. Yeah. We have to get to a point where we understand that leadership is on a lot of different levels, and we have to be able to lead in our own respective communities. As I do these stories, and I promote stories about people who are in our community and other communities that are doing things, there's the evidence of it, because we're not being able to see all these different movements going on at one time. We get this fatalistic view that nothing is ever going to change, that we're not doing anything. And the truth of the matter is there are people all over the world who are doing things that make a difference. And I think we have to begin to focus on that, because what we get, and you're a historian, so you understand the importance of the story. We keep getting their story and not our story. Righting the wrongs that have existed historically is extremely important because of our perception of the past. And again, no one could testify to that to a greater extent than you are. So I want to ask another question since we're having this conversation, and that's something that I just recently, and I'm ashamed to admit my ignorance comments on this, but this whole idea of critical race theory. You know, we're seeing efforts by different states, like Texas has already done it. They've already said you can't talk about the sins of our white forefathers in class when you're talking to a kindergartner or anyone through the 12th grade. What do you think we can do to reverse this effort to ban critical race theory in our schools?
Well, I think, first of all, we make a mistake by assuming. In other words, I think, what do they say, charity begins at home? That I think that we make the mistake of expecting other people to tell our story and teach our history, and that's our responsibility to do that. And I don't think we need to, of course, we pay taxes, we're a part of the system whether we like it or not, and we need to bring pressure to bear on the powers that be to implement our will. But I think that we have to take another sort of initiative and make sure that we do it ourselves, that we don't depend on anybody to teach our story and tell our story. That's our responsibility. It starts at home. It's something that should be done 24/7, 365 days out of the year. And I don't think that we should allow the powers that be to dictate our strategies and realities and what we do. The question I would put, the additional question that I wanted to inject was, is it possible to inject a sense of urgency in our community? One of the challenges for me is to know that I'm working to help liberate a group of people that don't seem to be terribly interested in liberation. And that's why I raised that issue about cycles. How much ultimate control do you have? Every time there's a George Floyd moment or a Black Lives moment or whatever the case may be, Juneteenth, Barack Obama, you kind of hope that this is the start of a new movement, a new wave. And these are the challenges that I think that we confront as intellectuals, as scholars, as media people, as race men and race women, as activists. And I think that these are important discussions that we need to have. So I wanted to raise those. I wanted to take this opportunity to deal with other African men, basically the same age group, to get a sense of perspective, because we're all in this together. Now, as you know, tomorrow I'm going to do a big program with Tony Browder, and we're calling it Brother to Brother. We're going to talk about fatherhood. We're going to talk about our role as scholars, and we want to be role models. We want to be able to show the world that African scholars and activists don't have to be at each other's throats all the time. There's not a contest. It's not a competition, that we're in this together, that we can work together, see the big picture. Believe it or not, we can even like each other and support each other as opposed to attacking each other. So for me, a lot of it is a matter of being a role model and implementing it, not just talking about Ma'at and Hotep and putting those words out there, but to actually implement it in a way for the community to see and emulate and be inspired by.
Yes. You know, it really is a daunting task when it comes to this idea of history. I'm reflecting on a conversation that I had with someone a couple days ago, and I asked the person if they knew of George Forbes. George Forbes served as the president of Cleveland City Council for probably around 20 years, once ran for mayor. And this is not in the very distant past. This is just like maybe 10, 20 years ago. And this person had never heard of George Forbes. And I was blown away. You know, we get so little when it comes to history, and we have so much in our mind space right now, a whole bunch of mental garbage that we don't need. You know, I stopped watching TV a couple years ago, but, you know, I know they're watching Atlanta Housewives and Black Ink Crew and all that other kind of stuff, but they're not even thinking about their own cities. There's a restaurant, one of our sponsors, Annie P's. He's got pictures of Carl Stokes and Louis Stokes, and young people come in that restaurant and they see all that history around them, and they don't even know who they're looking at. You know, the Cleveland schools have failed dramatically. If these children are coming through these schools and they don't even know about the leadership in this town, in this state, in this country. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Dr. Rashidi. You know, this education has to start at home, and we cannot allow our oppressor to tell us who we are and what we are, because, you know, it's just like Brother Hamtonio says at the beginning of every show, thanks to Dr. Qua David Whitaker, what we do for ourselves.
And Runoko, they got to give him credit for that. I got it from the Runoko, but go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I got it from Qua David. Let me ask you another question now. This is going to be maybe controversial, but I'll put it out there. Mm-hmm. Do you think most black people, would you say African Americans, we'll keep it in the United States, do you think most black people want to be liberated and empowered, or have we just acclimated ourselves to being at the bottom of the social ladder? There's an old Negro spiritual, I understand, that goes, Lord, I've been down so long, it's starting to look like up to me. And what I don't see in our community is, as I pointed out, is a sense of urgency. And I don't know where the urgency button is. If I knew where it was, I would push it. And that, to me, is perhaps the most frustrating thing of all, that you work and work and work, and for the most part, our people seem to be oblivious to it. So I would say that we do this not just for our people, the struggle that we wage, but we also do it for ourselves, because there's a sense of obligation that you have this information and you can't sit on it. You must act. I believe that at some point in time we will all face the ancestors, and they will say, Vince Robinson, what did you do to advance the cause of your people? And you need to be able to say, I did this and that and the other, and I know they're going to say, welcome, my brother, a job well done. So this sense of individual responsibility that you can't give up, that you can take a break, you can take a rest, you can take a holiday, you can go on vacation, but you can't quit and you can't stop, because if you do, you become part of the problem that we are confronting.
Some of us are so entrenched in the mind games and the slavery that when they open the door to the cage, we've been so comfortable sitting in the cage that we don't have the gumption to walk out. You know, it's really sad to say that. Yeah, that it's really sad to say that, but that's how it is, you know. And some of us, we don't want to get involved because it will require us to work. And some of us don't want to work, you know, and then there's the ego part of it. You know, we don't get things accomplished because there are so many egos at play, you know, and everybody wants to be the top dog. And because of that, we can't lock arms together and move forward. I don't have to agree with all your thoughts, all your philosophies, but we do have to agree that something needs to be done and we have to work together. So that's how I would respond.
But you know what? I think the key to, you know, it's like I say, cycles and divine intervention, I think, is going to have to play with this, because it's above all our purview, our pay grade, our level of where we at, because this been entrenched, the Willie Lynch and the Stockholm syndrome has been working for a long time, and it's going to take a minute. But I think through cycles and through our ancestors, you know, it's going to make the change, because, you know, Africa, talking about the free trade situation, a lot of information is starting to pop up from Africa, and people starting to pay attention to what's going on in Africa, and also, you know, same thing what's going on with this country. There's a light lit, but I think that during this time it's being overshadowed until it's able to stand on its own. We see all the craziness, but there's still a movement, an undercurrent that is going on of knowledge, of awareness, you know, people coming back, and those little bitty things, you know, that we get those little accomplishments. You know, we got to seize them, and we got to take advantage of them. Even with the Juneteenth, my question is, and quickly, is that what kind of holiday is going to be? Is it going to be a real total type of holiday? Is it going to be an educational type of holiday? So we got to get out in front of this and curve on how and promote what type of holiday that this is going to be. You know, so it should be used as a holiday, or the whole month as a place of education. So I think it's timing. Timing is going to be the key to take these blinders off and give people, you know, this what we all looking for in order to move forward.
Well, speaking of timing, and this is definitely a question that I wanted to pose to Dr. Rashidi, it was about the Juneteenth holiday. I mean, a few weeks back, the Asians got an anti-Asian crime bill or something to that effect passed, and then just in a couple of days, they rushed this to the House and the Senate, and Republicans voted for a Juneteenth holiday. That just does not make sense to me, because at the same time, they're trying to ban critical race theory. So, I just wonder what the motivation was for making this a federal holiday. You can make this a federal holiday, but you can't have a conversation about reparations. And you ignore the fact that slave owners received reparations when their slaves were freed, supposedly, but not really. I mean, this is crazy. What do you think about this holiday, Dr. Rashidi, and what do you see as the future for it in terms of commemorating it?
And, don't forget to add the suppression of voting rights.
Right.
Yes, that's a big deal. So I think that the bottom line for Europeans in general, and these Republicans in particular, is self-preservation. And I don't think that they would give us anything that they thought would somehow diminish their overall power. Perhaps and I was shocked at how fast it moved too, but perhaps they just see this as a way to keep these black people quiet. We gave y'all a holiday. You had an African-American president. Shut up. Stop talking about critical race theory. Stop talking about reparations. We are free. You got a holiday. You had an African-American president. You already had Martin Luther King Day. We're giving y'all Kwanzaa. So, I mean, we have arrived. Free at last, free at last, I guess, is the mentality. Now, my position is we have to see ourselves as engaged in a process. It's not an event. It's not a one-time thing, but it's a process. That includes us having victories from time to time. I think the Juneteenth holiday is a victory if we seize it. And if we use it as an opportunity to tell our story and educate our people from our perspective, we know what these white supremacists are about. And that is not about the best interests of African people. So the struggle, the ball is in our court. The key to victory is in our hands, but we just have to pursue that. And we have to never let up, never think the struggle is over. I think that a lot of folks thought that when Barack Obama was elected, when Biden was elected, that was the end of the struggle, that we could kick back now, that we could chill, but that's only a part of the process. And I think that we have to look at it as a process and not an event. And it's going to take lifetimes to achieve. And this is the kind of thing that I think that we can use Juneteenth for, to tell our story from our perspective without stuttering, stammering, whispering, and mostly without apologizing. And a part of that story is to talk about the horrific treatment that we have received even since slavery, to talk about Jim Crow, to talk about the black codes, to talk about mass incarceration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So ultimately, it's on us. And if we don't carry it forward, I mean, we'll be the ones who feel the negative effects the most. Yeah. That's how I would respond to that.
Okay. There is a group of young people who sponsored a week-long series of events, and they're culminating that with an event tomorrow. I was blessed to participate in a few of those events. Wednesday night, we actually had an event at the African American Museum here in Cleveland where we addressed the generational divide within our culture. You know, young black folk and elders being divisive, not being connected, disrespecting each other, and we got perspectives from both elements, you know. But as I look at these young folks, you know, they had a central theme of healing through various modalities. And this is really what gives me hope, because these folks did not wait for us to pass the baton to them. They grabbed it willingly. They're taking it by the horn. And I'm sure that there are other young folks who feel the same way. You know, and as we have this conversation, you know, I just think about the fact that we are genetically connected to this greatness that has existed within our race for so long. So I see that the DNA of Marcus Garvey is in Dr. Runoko Rashidi. And the DNA of Imhotep is in Tony Browder. And we have all these people who are expressing those who came before us through their thoughts, through their words, and through our actions. You're listening to 360 Info Network here on AM 1490 with Hamtonio, yours truly, Vince Robinson, and our special guest, Dr. Runoko Rashidi. We're going to talk about this great presentation that he's going to do next weekend. That will be Friday and Saturday, and also a gathering that is going to take place online with Dr. Rashidi and Tony Browder on tomorrow. We'll give you more information on that when we return to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. We're back. 360 Info Network, Hamtonio, Vince Robinson, and our guest, Dr. Runoko Rashidi. Dr. Rashidi, let's talk about this great webinar that you're going to do next weekend. We want to make sure that those of us who would be able to see you here at Larchmere Arts, because they can't see you there, they can see you online. So what do they need to do?
Well, the program is Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's the first part. The second part is Saturday morning. I believe that's at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time or 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The focus is on the African presence in Europe, and we're going to look specifically Friday night at the Moors. On Saturday morning, we're going to look at the image of the African in the European Renaissance. It's going to be very interesting. Going to show a lot of photographs. It's going to be something different, something unique. It is on Zoom. If people are interested, they can do one of three things. They can go to my website, which is drrunoko.com. You can email me at runoko@hotmail.com, RUNOKO, excuse me, at hotmail.com. Or the easiest thing is simply to go to Eventbrite and type in Runoko, RUNOKO, and it will show you how to register. It's $25 for both days. It's very affordable. We try to make it child-friendly. We try to make it family-friendly. The presentations will be about an hour in length, and then we'll open it up to the audience for questions and answers, and it's going to be visually stunning. All original photographs that illustrate these important themes in African history. So that's what we're going to do next weekend.
Okay. And you also mentioned that you'll be doing something with Tony Browder tomorrow, and you said the URL was pretty long, so let folks know how they can witness this conversation with you and Tony tomorrow.
Now, that's tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's called Brother to Brother, and it's a 90-minute program, 2 African scholars, hopefully in their prime, doing very, very good work. So we're going to talk about our scholarship. We essentially are going to interview each other and have a conversation. We're going to talk about fatherhood and the significance of that. I think of myself as a very, very good historian, but I want my daughter to be able to say, my daddy was a great historian, but he made time for me, that I was a priority to him. So we want to talk about our responsibilities as fathers, as black men. And it's the Juneteenth weekend, summer solstice. So it's going to be a lot of positive energy. But mostly, I think the key thing is just to show scholars working with each other instead of at each other. We're in this together. We always say we're at war. A war has been declared on us, but our actions don't seem to indicate that we have to be able to see the big picture. And so Tony and I are going to, Anthony Browder and I are going to try to illustrate that tomorrow, as we do with all of our work. We are not rivals. We are not competitors, but we are truly brothers. So for that tomorrow, again, the URL is very long. Somebody email me, Dr. Runoko, that's my website. Email me at runoko@hotmail.com, and I'd be happy to send that link. And that's completely free. All you have to do is register.
Okay. During the break, you mentioned that you're going to be taking a trip to Kemet. To those who don't know, Kemet is Egypt. You're going to be making that trip to Kemet, and you also mentioned that Tony Browder just returned from there. Can you tell us anything in terms of an update on the progress of his excavation?
Well, Tony is the head of a project called the Asia Restoration Project. and is named after Asa Hilliard. And what he has been doing for many years now is financing the excavation of a series of tombs that come at the end of the 25th dynasty, which is the Nubian dynasty in Canaanite history, and Dynasty 26. First, he found a tomb of a man named Karakamun. And Karakamun, I'm not sure if he was just a high official, I shouldn't say just, a high official or a priest. And then he found another tomb, and I believe the name of the person is Karabaskin. And now it looks like they're finding a series of Kushite or Nubian tombs. You have in Egypt now the Valley obviously the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of the Queens, the tombs of the nobles, the tombs of the workers, but it looks like this series of tombs will be basically the tombs of the Kushite nobles. And here's a brother that has been financing that for years and being a major part of the dig. So he just left Egypt because National Geographic United Kingdom was just there filming it. Now in October, what we're going to do, we're going to have a bigger program. And I will have just gotten back from Kemet, God willing, and I will find some new things. For example, the tomb chamber of Djoser, the step pyramid, is open now. You know, I hope to be able to visit some sites I haven't visited before. And he will have just gotten back again. This will be my 26th trip. I think he's been there about 50 times. And we will talk about our own findings in terms of the African experience. What does that mean? That African scholars are doing their own first-hand researches. One of the reasons that Tony and I get along so well is because we realize that we don't threaten each other, that our work supplements each other. For the last 10 or 15 years, as you know, I've been haunting every major museum in the world to photograph and document the African artifacts in those museums. He's actually been doing a series of digs. And so we think that we are all spokes in a much larger wheel. And this is our contribution to our ancestors, to our present generations, and to future generations. There's a proverb that goes, you must build something that outlives you. And so this is our contribution. And these are things that we're both involved in that will outlive us. And we want the world to see it. We want to be positive role models for African liberation and show that we don't have to fight each other. We don't have to snipe. We don't have to compete, that we're all in this together. And there's enough glory for everybody if that's what you're about. Because we surely have egos. Jacob Carruthers told me before he passed, and I think Dr. Carruthers is a scholar that deserves more study, he says, Runoko, the biggest problem we have in the conscious community is not white supremacy. He says it's our very own egos. And we have to be able to suppress that for the common good. And sometimes it's easier said than done, apparently.
Yes. Can you tell us anything about the progress in the relocation of the museum?
Brother, they keep putting the opening back. We were told that it would be open in March. Then we told it would be open in August. I suspect that the new museum, won't open until later this year or possibly next year. And once it's open, I guess it'll be worth the wait, because surely it will be the greatest collection of Nile Valley artifacts that have ever been assembled under one roof.
Mm-hmm. You know, we've had conversations about museums being repositories of stolen loot, and I think the president of Ghana requested that certain things be returned to the country of Ghana. Are you seeing any momentum in this effort to recover our antiquities?
I see some movement, but I see it in large measure as kind of tokenism. Just like we talked about some of the other things that are used sometimes to satisfy people and shut us up. So I do see some movement in terms of repatriation of African art, especially to Nigeria. But I think it's not nearly enough, and greater demands have to be made by these governments. You hear things being sent back to Ethiopia, to Nigeria, and perhaps Ghana as well, but it's not enough. And also, African governments have to finance excavations in their own countries, and they have to make it clear that their history is important. Africa is the birthplace of humanity. Africa is the birthplace of civilization, and yet African governments don't seem to have seized on that. And I think that they need to be in the forefront of not only demanding the artifacts be brought back, but also much more actively engaged in excavations in Africa itself by Africans. We shouldn't need Europeans to come to Africa and dig. Africans themselves have the primary responsibility of making our history known to the world. And I don't think we're doing as good a job on that as we can. And I certainly don't think in general, that African governments are doing as much as they can and have to do.
Okay. Well, we cannot say that you're not doing what you have to do. And tomorrow, or next weekend, a 2-day webinar, African Star Over Europe, the 25th and the 26th. It's going to be at 8 p.m. on the 25th and 11 a.m. on the 26th. That's Eastern Standard Time. African Star Over Europe, Dr. Runoko Rashidi. You can go to Eventbrite and just put in Runoko, and it'll bring up a link to connect you with your opportunity to get tickets, or you can email Runoko at Hotmail, or you can go to drrunoko.com and get in on this great event. Dr. Rashidi, it's been a pleasure to have you on today, and we look forward to future conversations on the endeavors that you are engaged in to raise the level of consciousness of Africans all over the world.
Brother Vince, Brother Lynn, thank you for having me. Stay strong. Happy holidays.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Same to you, though, brother.
Okay.
All right.
So, Lynn, you had an announcement that you wanted to make about your event, and then I will announce mine.
Yes, again, August 7th, we got to cleanse, we got to heal, because we don't know what's coming down the pike, so we got to be ready. This is your opportunity. 4 great speakers under one roof, probably one of the hottest of the year, so you get a chance to participate and also help promote this. So we'll talk more about it next week.
Okay. And I'm really happy to say that Larchmere Arts is reopening. We had a great event last night. Quite a number of folks came through. Uplift did an art show, and then art actually sold, and that's a beautiful thing. Tonight we are going to have J.T. Lynch of Horns and Things, Brother Stephen E. Boyd from Hugh People Vocal Ensemble, Rashawn Blake of the Jazz Poets, and yours truly. We're going to do some liberation music, so to speak. We're celebrating Juneteenth from a conscious perspective, so join in. The tickets today are $15. All you have to do is show up. You can Cash App in advance, $THA Soul Poet at Cash App, and drop it in. I'll add you to the list, and we'll get you in there, and we'll have a good time tonight. Also, didn't do it last week, but I want to give a big shout out to our engineer, Tristan Sanchez. He's very diligent about doing what he can to make this show a success, and we appreciate his efforts. I also like to shout out some folks who are watching us on YouTube. We got our brother Mark Steffens all the way from Colombia, tuned in to 360 Info Network, Okambi Ifatola, Monica Baker Brown, and Ma Mekanu Younger. Thanks for tuning in. With that, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today a great day. Cleveland. Peace.
Peace.